Today I'd like to talk about 7 lessons that I learned from my experience living abroad. Can you guess what they might be? Hi, I'm Jerry with Global Connection ESL. Have you subscribed to this channel? Be sure to ring the bell below so that you get updates whenever I upload new videos. Alright, let's jump in. Lesson number 1. It takes time to learn a new culture and a new language. My time abroad in Japan was long, but I have to say that it took me a long time before I really understood so many of the deep understandings of the culture. I made mistake after mistake after mistake. And I had to give myself some grace because each time I made a mistake, there were times where I thought, oh, I don't fit here. But that's normal. There is a cultural adjustment process. Also, there were many times where I was discouraged that I wasn't learning the language fast enough. There were so many new vocabulary words. Many times I made mistakes that felt so stupid. But again and again, I kept pushing forward and realized that it takes time to learn a new culture and a new language. Lesson number 2. I had to learn to be willing to laugh at myself. Even though I was already an adult, I was in a new culture, much like a child, learning new things for the first thing in my life. Whenever I did something strange and others looked at me in an odd way, I simply had to understand that I had made a mistake. There were times where I had to just laugh at myself because I just didn't understand what was going on. And I knew in time I would be able to understand. Lesson number 3. Perspectives about money and the use of money can be quite different. Certainly they were different than my home culture and my parents' understanding and teaching about money. Some things are considered cheap, other things are considered expensive. But culturally, those are decided by families and cultures. Sometime, if you're really interested in knowing about it, I'll share with you the story of how I really surprised my mother-in-law with my understanding of money. I think she simply lost her words because she didn't know what to think. My perspective was so different. Now, after time has passed, I actually respect her perspective probably more than the one I had at that time. Lesson number 4, I learned to be less judgmental. You know, when we get tired, there is an easy tendency to think, oh, that's wrong. However, it isn't necessarily wrong. It might just be a cultural difference. And I started to try to live by the mantra, it's not right, it's not wrong, it's just different. And so this helped me to be less judgmental when I saw someone doing something that I thought was not smart, but simply different than what I was doing. This happened in so many different situations around money, around relationships, around individual culture versus a group-oriented culture, because I came from an individualistic culture and I had a tendency to be judgmental about the group-oriented culture. But there are so many different rules. So understanding these things helped me to be less judgmental. Lesson number 5. After the many ups and downs of cultural adjustment and the mistakes that I made over and over again, I learned that I really need to take this chance of living abroad to learn more about myself. This was an incredible lesson for me to learn. In fact, I don't think I would have learned as much about myself if I had stayed in my home culture. Living abroad, living in a different culture, living with a different language really helped me to understand more about who I am. And once I understood more about who I am, it helped me to grow and mature. This was a great lesson. So the lesson was for me, take time to realize things can be different and learn about who you are. This leads me into lesson number 6. Take time to listen more and reflect more. Reflection is key when you're out of your typical environment. Reflection comes from journaling, talking to friends about your questions in a non-judgmental place. Reflecting and taking time to listen gives us a chance to learn more about ourselves and the culture around us. Living abroad can be one of the most wonderful experiences. It also can be challenging. Every time you make a cultural mistake or a language error, you can feel bad about yourself. But this leads me to lesson number 7. Lesson number 7 is be thankful for this chance to grow, even when it's hard. Being thankful for anything helps us to open our minds to more positive thinking. Being thankful helps us to understand ways that we can grow without being so critical. However, the truth is there are very challenging and hard times when you are learning a new language and integrating into a new culture. It is hard. There were nights I went to sleep with a headache because of studying so many new vocabulary words. But I reminded myself to be thankful for this opportunity to grow. It made a difference. So there you have it. Those are 7 things that I learned while I was living abroad. Currently I'm back in the United States, living and working here. I realized that my time of living abroad was life-changing for me. It was so good and helped me to mature and grow in ways that I never could have grown if I had not lived abroad. What about you? Have you lived abroad? Do you want to live abroad? Do you need to improve your English in order to move to an English-speaking country? Let me know. I read every comment that you share. Also, I'd love it if you would like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. And someday, whether it's in this country or maybe your country, we might have a chance to meet and talk about the lessons we learned from living abroad. I hope so.